Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct today from Black Facts Headquarters Central. Greetings to everyone this noonday. We're still on the trail dealing with race in space. So not the space race, but race in space. So our proverb for today on Doc Ock at noon and 9 is, if there were no elephant in the jungle, the buffalo would be a great animal. If there were no elephant in the jungle, the buffalo would be a great animal. And that's a proverb from Ghana. Now, I know I said I was going to do all my poetry this month, but sometimes you stumble across something and it just seems to fit in so well, you just have to use it in spite of the fact that it's really not what you said you were going to do, but it's right in there though. So this is my interpretation of this particular poem. This one is done by Big Bill Brunzi. Okay, comes from Big Bill Brunzi. So here we go. This train is bound for glory, this train don't care no gamblers, this train don't care no gamblers, this train don't care no gamblers, no hypocrites, no midnight ramblers, this train bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory, this train is bound for glory, this train is bound for glory, nobody riding but the righteous and the holy, this train bound for glory now, this train is built for speed now, this train is built for speed now, this train is built for speed, fastest train you ever did see now, this train bound for glory now, this train don't care no liars, this train don't care no liars, this train don't care no liars, no hypocrites and no bar flyers, this train bound for glory now, this train is solid black, boy, this train is solid black now, this train is solid black, white in case you don't come back, boy, this train bound for glory now, this train you don't pay transportation on, this train you don't pay any transportation on, this train you don't pay any transportation, no Jim Crow and no discrimination on, this train glory now, this train don't care whether you're white or black, this train don't care whether you're white or black on, this train don't care whether you're white or black, everybody ride it is treated just alike, this train bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory, nobody ride it but the righteous and the holy now, this train bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory now, this train is bound for glory, this train. So I thought that was a particularly apt poem for this particular day as we start to talk about some of our black stars in orbit. So this is particularly talking about the African Americans that NASA sent into space. I have to really qualify it like that because we did talk about yesterday the first African American to go into space was a gentleman by the name of Arnaldo Tamayo Mendez. And there he is in his Soyuz 38 space capsule with Yuri Romanenko of the Soviet Union back in 1978. Okay, I don't think I showed this picture yesterday because I'm pretty sure I didn't show it because I didn't have it ready yet. But I got it ready today so that you can see what the brother looked like. See what a picture looked like of quote racial harmony. So, black stars in orbit. Let's see what they got to say. Did I read this part? I don't recall reading this part here. Oh, I might have read this part, but I'm going to read this part again, even if I did read it previously. This is a quote. These are the three astronauts, the first three black astronauts in the NASA space program. And you see here, Colonel Frederick D. Gregory, and then you see Guyan Bluford, which I don't know his rank right off the bat. And you also see over here Ronald McNair. All right. And all three of them flew on the shuttle missions. And so there's a quote on the back of this book from Colonel Frederick D. Gregory. You just get a marvelous view of the world from space. I was 190 miles up. You see a lot of the world. And of course, you're going around every 90 minutes. And so you see it very rapidly. And you see it over and over again. And the thing that impressed me was that you could see Houston. And then you'd see how really close Houston was to Mexico City. And how close Mexico City was to South America, to Africa, to Russia. Everything was right there. But the great thing about it was that unlike the Rand McNally maps, there were no state boundaries. You kind of wondered from above as you looked down and as you passed over what appeared to be city to city, but was actually continent to continent, how there could be any problems at all down there because everybody was everybody's neighbor. Everybody was everybody's neighbor. Everybody is everybody's neighbor because that situation hasn't changed. So we can speak of that in the present tense, actually. Okay. And I'm also going to read from the flap inside here. Okay. At 2:32 a.m. on August 30, 1983, the Space Shuttle Challenger lifted off on NASA's 39th manned space mission. For the first time in the history of the program, an African-American, Colonel Guyan S. Bluford Jr., was part of the crew. Today, NASA can boast a handful of black astronauts, but African-Americans have not always been welcome in this highly visible role. Although African-American scientists worked behind the scenes to make America's early space missions possible, no black astronauts flew on those flights. It was not until 1976 that a NASA campaign to find black astronauts was even launched, leading to the recruitment of the two Air Force colonels and the civilian scientists who would become African Americans to journey into space. Black Stars in Orbit is the inspiring story of these three men and the African Americans who have followed them and taken their place in the forefront of space exploration and discovery. And so we're going to go here. So this story really starts, really you could say back in WW2, or excuse me, World War, well, more like WW2. Yeah, I would go back to WW2. And the reason why I would go back that far is because World War II, that's when you had a training program that was run out of Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama, that was training up African Americans to be pilots, primarily as part of a war effort for World War II. And they became what we know now as the Tuskegee Airmen. Now, this wasn't the beginning of African Americans or Black people being involved in flight. Our story, in terms of being involved in flight, started much earlier than that, with Bessie Coleman and the Black Eagle and the Brown Condor. Okay, so they actually had been participating in this whole thing we now call flight prior to World War II, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll do a whole nother segment on Blacks in flight. Okay, but not today. All right. So right now we're just dealing with the a specific aspect, but we have to go about the Black flyers. Oh yeah, you know what? I did read this part here because I read about Daedalus and all of that. Okay, the first African American. Okay, so the first African American to venture into space was Colonel Guyan S. Bluford Jr. at 2:32 a.m. on August 30, 1983. Colonel Bluford took his place in history beside other African American pioneers when the Space Shuttle Challenger lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on mission STS-8. The initials STS stand for Space Transportation System, the official name of the Space Shuttle. And the 8 means that this flight was the 8th Space Shuttle mission. Oh, let me show you a picture while we're doing this here. And Guyan Bluford, this is a picture of him as a much older man. Oh, you know what? Here, I use this one here because this is a better picture than the one that was on the cover of the book. You can see all three of them right there. Guyan Bluford in the middle, the one over here next to my finger. This is Colonel Frederick Gregory. And then on the other side over there of Bluford is Ronald McNair. Okay, all three of them were space shuttle astronauts. Okay, they all flew on the space shuttles. All right, here we go. Now, if a mission requires more than one flight, each flight will have a letter after the mission number as well. STS-8 was also the first ever nighttime launch of a shuttle. Thousands of people who had come from all over the country to see the historic launch stood in the rain rather than miss it. They waited nervously for hours in the dark and dismal weather as the countdown was stopped and then started again. Then, when the countdown reached T9, only 9 seconds left to go before liftoff. The weather broke, the rain stopped, and a hole opened up in the clouds to reveal the starry sky. Anticipation and excitement mounted as the countdown grew closer. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition! Suddenly, the earth shook and a fiery brilliance lit up the night, almost turning night into day. The blast from the solid rocket boosters could be seen as far away as North Carolina. 500 miles up the eastern coast of the United States, Guyan Stewart Bluford Jr., or Guy, as his friends call him, was born November 22nd, 1942, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As a youngster, Guy loved building model airplanes and read everything he could get his hands on to learn what makes them fly. By the time he reached the 2nd grade, he had developed a passion for math and the sciences. That was also about the time he decided he would pursue a career in aeronautical engineering. So, like Guy, I was also affected by the space program and this whole push for science and the push towards science in the schools, etc. I was also affected by that. So I still have clippings from the moonwalk. All right, I clipped those things out of the paper. Like millions of other young African Americans with lofty goals, Guy encountered high school guidance counselors who tried to discourage him from pursuing his dream. One of those guidance counselors advised him to settle for a career as a carpenter or a, what else did he suggest? Auto mechanic instead. The hidden message, which wasn't that hidden, was that as a black person, he didn't have the intelligence to become an aeronautical engineer. But the counselor's skepticism only made Guy work that much harder to prove them wrong. He got into Penn State and graduated 4 years later with a Bachelor of Science degree in aerospace engineering. At the same time, he completed the Air Force Reserve Officers Training Corps program at Penn State, ROTC as it's known today. After graduation, Guy went right into the Air Force. And within a year, he had earned his wings. Colonel Bluford went on to log more than 5,000 hours of jet flight time and to earn his PhD in aerospace engineering with a minor in laser physics. Then in the mid-70s, Colonel Bluford joined NASA and became one of a new breed of astronauts known as mission specialists. Mission specialists are responsible for conducting all of the scientific and engineering experiments aboard the shuttle. As part of the 5-man crew of STS-8, Colonel Bluford carried out medical experiments that are only possible in the weightless conditions of space. These experiments may eventually yield new drugs or even cures for some diseases. Colonel Bluford was also responsible for deploying a $45 million communications satellite for the government of India. The satellite, which had been carried into space aboard the shuttle, had to be released carefully into its proper orbit in order for it to be of any use to India or to anyone on Earth. Otherwise, it would end up as a $45 million piece of useless space junk. Guy Bluford's responsibilities were great, but the personal rewards were also great. The experience of floating weightless in space and of seeing the Earth we live on alone in the vast black expanse of space. These are experiences that only a very few people have had in the history of human existence. If Guy Bluford had listened to those who told him what he couldn't do, he would never have become one of those rare few we call astronauts. It was 10 years from the time of Colonel Bluford's first flight until an African-American woman ventured into space. NASA's first Black woman astronaut, Dr. Mae C. Jemison. And there we go. Picture of Mae Jemison with a space shuttle in her hand. Dr. Mae C. Jemison made her historic flight aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour on September 12, 1992. She was part of the 7-member crew of STS-47 that carried Space Lab J into orbit in a joint venture between the U.S. and Japan. Space Lab J is a pressurized laboratory about the size of a city bus that can be fitted into the cargo bay of the space shuttle. Over the course of the 7-day mission, the crew lived and worked in Space Lab J, conducting 43 experiments while orbiting the Earth at nearly 18,000 miles per hour. And here's a picture of her in J. That's Dr. Jemison floating in air. After STS-47 landed, Dr. Jemison returned to her hometown of Chicago, Illinois. Chi-town. It ain't my town, but it's thy town. There, 8,000 school children attended a homecoming party and celebrated her accomplishments, just as their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents had celebrated the accomplishments of earlier pioneer aviators, because part of the story of Black aviators revolves around the city of Chicago and the Black men and women aviators that were trained up at the schools that were developed in Chicago, Illinois, which I can't go into now because our time has already run out. I'm over time here, but we will come back to that on another date in the future. I'll let you know when. Stay tuned for more information on Black aviation. Meanwhile, we're going to read a little bit more from Black Stars tomorrow, Black Stars in Orbit, and see what else we can learn about some of the early African Americans that were able to go out to the outer edge of our stratosphere, all up into the stratosphere. Meanwhile, we're going to be signing off here in just a minute. I would like to remind everybody we're still looking for your support. We are only able to present this kind of information. We are the only daily, twice daily, Black History live stream on the internet. You will not find any other live streaming going on Black History on a daily basis. So if you want to know about Black history and you want to go further than just learning about it for a month in February, this is the place to be. The home of Black, the birthplace of Black history, right here on Black Facts Educational Research's channel. So check back in with us. We'll be Black tonight at 9. And of course, it will be Black here tomorrow at noon. In the meanwhile, we hope we've left a smile on your face and some knowledge that'll help you win your race. Peace out now. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9, signing off.